Hey, what's up everybody? This is Nightwing2303 from KicksOnCourt.com. Today we have another performance review and is on the recently released Nike KD6. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. As usual, start off with the bottom of the shoe. As you can see, we have storytelling traction, and this time around it didn't work as good as it did with the KD5, unfortunately. The rubber is very sticky and it is pliable, which is great on a clean floor, but on a dusty floor it has that adverse effect where it just kind of like layers itself in between your foot and the floor itself, which is kind of a bummer in my opinion. The only way to really remedy this is to either use a sticky mat or to just keep wiping at every dead ball, which is what I had to do. So, and I played on some of the cleanest floors in these shoes, and the smallest amount of dust affected these guys. So the main difference, both patterns do use storytelling. The main thing is that this one, with the KD5, they took the rubber out around the pattern, and then this one they took the rubber out within the pattern. So this guy here is got more angles, and the pattern itself is by itself, so it works. If they would have removed the lines and the circles and left all of those little triangles that are hollowed out as the pattern, like this guy here, this would have worked perfectly fine on any surface. So that was the one downfall with this shoe. In my opinion, I think that's its main downfall, is that the traction just isn't as good as this one here, which is kind of a bummer, because this was such a good all-around shoe that this one was so close it was ridiculous, and for the traction to hold it back, that kind of sucks. As far as cushion, we have the same exact setup as the KD5. We have a heel Air Max unit, and then we have that 4-foot 10mm Zoom, which is a rectangle. It's a thin bar straight across. The main difference is the foam itself that they used. This foam is just way more comfortable fresh out the box. This thing did not require any break-in time whatsoever, and even when I had switched around from this shoe to a different shoe like the Soldier 7, I found myself wanting to go back to these guys. These guys were really, really, really comfortable. There's really no other way to explain it. They were ready to go straight out the box, no break-in time with the cushion whatsoever, and they were more comfortable than the KD5 right from the get-go. The materials themselves are not too far off from the KD5. Basically you have that fuse upper, which is something that we've been seeing in nearly every single basketball shoe other than maybe the Kobe. Those are primarily engineered mesh. Now, this kind of fuse, personally, it feels a little bit cheap. It's just as strong as last year's model, but it just feels cheaper. It's pretty thin. This one actually stays bowed or creases, however you want to call it, and I don't personally mind, but I just do think that it's kind of weird. It's not quite as strong as fuses that we've used in the past. However, the good part about it is that it didn't hurt. I had a little bit of hot spots right here when I first tried them on, right at the flex points, and basically within that shoot around that first night, they went away and it was perfectly fine. It was like a broken in shoe, like I said, with the cushion straight out the box. It was kind of weird, so I did like it, but at the same time it does feel a little bit cheap, so I don't know how other people are going to feel about it, but that's just kind of my impression when I have this next to other like premium price shoes like LeBron's and even last year's KD5, which is a little bit cheaper. So fuse in my opinion is nice, but it doesn't feel as nice as last year's. As far as the fit, basically I went up half a size and they fit me perfect. So I would recommend that. If you're a wide footer, this is one shoe you're really going to have to try on. KD is known for having narrow shoes because he does have a narrow foot. So they use narrow lasts on his sneakers. The KD4 was probably the worst of them just because that one fit him perfectly and not really anybody else. So, well, I mean it did fit other people, but not me. So, but yeah, so these guys here, they run a little bit narrow. But I did go up half a size and it fits me fine. Like I said, break-in time, everything's perfect. You have this asymmetrical lacing system that goes all the way up to just below where your ankle begins to flex. I showed this in the last video, but if this is my foot, your lacing system stops right here, and then the heel counter right here cups the rest of your foot. So it's kind of like a really weird setup. It's very, very low, and it works. Once everything is laced up perfectly, you get basically like a perfect lockdown, which is crazy. It's something that I personally, just looking at them, I was like, I don't know, these are way too low, and I'm a low top fanatic when it comes to basketball. That's usually the only thing that I like to play in, and even these had me kind of worried, but they are perfect. The lockdown is perfect. These probably are the best fitting low tops since the Nike Zoom Kobe 5. So ventilation was improved slightly from last year's model. Basically, instead of having those small little side vents on the medial and lateral side that did pretty much nothing, they put the ventilation on the top. Now that's great because heat rises and the toe of your foot is kind of where that heat's escaping, so if it's coming through here and then back out the top of the foot, this is kind of where you'd need that ventilation. Basically they have an overlapping tongue and it is perforated, and then this one has a little bit of padding, not too much, but basically where you can see all of those lines in there, or sorry, hopefully you could see that. But the pattern itself is the padded sections, and then the open areas are the open mesh. So moisture is still going to be in this shoe just because it's plastic. It's not too breathable, but it's not as bad as it could be. Definitely not as bad as last year's, and it is what it is. You can't really say too much about it. The good news is that this thing fits you really, really good, so you're probably not going to get blisters and stuff like that from your foot sliding inside the shoe. As far as support, this was one of those other things that was a slight drawback. It's not a drawback for me, but it's something I could feel, and I know that other people are probably going to dislike it. That would be the arch support. This guy does not have a shank inside, or it doesn't have an external shank, I should say, for torsional support. Instead it has an internal bar shank, which is pretty typical of like the Hyperfuse line and then other team models, but it doesn't provide enough torsional support for most people. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of flex this thing and move it. Fuck, the hell is that? And move it around in ways that you typically wouldn't kind of want that shoe to move around. You want that shoe to fit uniform to your foot, which this does, but the longer that you play in it throughout the night, it does stretch out a little bit from all the heat that is inside the shoe, and I was able to feel my arch of my foot pull away from the actual midsole. Just slightly, and it was only when in motion, so when the shoe is flexing, it's not retaining its shape as well as it should be. So that was one of those downsides. Again, the main downside to me is the traction, but it's not like going to kill the shoe. It's just be careful, because if you're on dust, you're going to have to keep these things clean. But then the second thing would be the lack of torsional and arch support is going to be a bummer for some people. The good news is that the rest of the support comes from that superior fit and upper. So with that being said, everything from the midsole up is almost perfect. It's basically just that arch that kind of suffers. One thing that I usually don't talk about that I do want to talk about this time, I'm going to go behind the camera so I can actually see, make sure that the camera's picking it up. But I don't know how long that these are going to last durability wise, because the lacing system is this like flywire integrated fuse type thing. So the flywire strands wrap around this one piece of piping or fabric, and that's what is your eyelets and your lace loops. So, and as you can see here, mine's already starting to stretch out, and if you're a really heavy four-footed player, I don't know how long that's going to last. It could break, I'm not sure. All it needs to do is separate itself from the flywire and the fuse, the weld there, and it could pop out. So that would be kind of a bummer. We'll see what happens. I don't think I can really break them because I'm pretty light-footed, but definitely heavy-footed players, that could be an issue. Overall, I think the KD6 is a really, really fun shoe to play in. It's super comfortable, it's really, really light. If you want to know how much it weighs exactly, you can go to my site. There's going to be a scorecard just like every other performance review. It's got the price, the weight, all of the scores, like the attributes and all that stuff on there. So it's a really lightweight shoe. It's flexible as far as the upper goes and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that's kind of a downside is that traction and the lack of a shank. So go ahead and check the scores on the site. I'll also have them throughout the video, throughout each section. And that'll kind of give you an idea as far as like what they offer and everything. So that is pretty much it. I personally thought that these are really, really fun to play in, and I do wish that they were priced a little bit lower. That's one thing. I do feel like the KD5 was more bang for your buck as far as a direct comparison. So especially since those things are still in stores, like I'd probably pick up another pair of KD5s over KD6s just based off of price alone. But if these were priced at $115, I'd grab these over the 5, especially if I played indoors on perfectly clean floors. So that takes care of everything. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for all your support. Hopefully this helped you guys out. And until next time, guys, have a good one.